just walk in here like nothing happened? You think you're better than everyone? Say something! No?
Of course.
You never have the guts to talk, do you? You just stare. Like I'm the problem.
I'm not moving.
Yeah, well, maybe you should. I'm warning you, Kia. Walk away before you regret it.
The cafeteria fell silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence, the kind where every breath feels too loud, where phones are raised instead of voices, where a circle of students forms not to help, but to watch. In the center stood 15-year-old Amara Thompson, her orange backpack still on her shoulders, facing a girl whose finger was pointed like a weapon. What happened next would be captured on dozens of phones, shared thousands of times, and spark a conversation that school administration could no longer ignore. But this story doesn't start with that moment. It starts 3 weeks earlier with small things. Comments, looks, the kind of daily erosion that happens when you're the only one who looks like you in a room full of people who don't.
Amara Thompson had been attending Riverside Preparatory Academy for exactly 21 days when everything changed. The scholarship student from the east side of town, she'd earned her place through academic excellence and a discipline most teenagers couldn't comprehend. Her mornings started at 5:30 a.m., not because she had to be at school early, but because that's when her dojang opened for training. Martial arts had been Amara's anchor since she was 7 years old. What started as her mother's attempt to build her confidence had become something deeper, a philosophy, a practice, a way of moving through the world. Her instructor, Master Kim, taught her that true strength wasn't about fighting. It was about control, about knowing you could act and choosing not to, about carrying power quietly. Riverside Prep was different from her previous school in every measurable way. The building looked like a small college campus with its brick facades and manicured lawns. The students carried laptops instead of notebooks, wore designer clothes that cost more than her mother's monthly rent, and spoke about summer homes and ski trips as casually as Amara discussed bus routes. She was one of 7 black students in a school of 420. The first week had been manageable. She kept her head down, focused on her classes, ate lunch while reviewing notes. Teachers seemed impressed with her work. She aced her first chemistry quiz, contributed thoughtfully in English discussions about James Baldwin, and even made the varsity track team despite being a sophomore. On paper, she was succeeding. But paper doesn't capture everything. It doesn't capture how Madison Hartley, blonde, popular, daughter of a real estate mogul, watched Amara during AP History with an expression that wasn't quite curiosity and wasn't quite hostility, something in between, something assessing. It doesn't capture how conversations would pause when Amara approached, then resume in slightly lower voices after she passed. It doesn't capture the Instagram post from the weekend of week 2, when several students gathered at Madison's house for a pool party. Amara wasn't invited, but she saw the photos. More specifically, she saw one photo that appeared for 8 hours before being deleted. Madison and 3 friends in what they probably thought was funny makeup, their skin darkened, their lips exaggerated, posing with comments about ghetto girls that they clearly found hilarious. Amara screenshotted it before it disappeared. She showed her mother, who went silent for a long moment before asking, "Do you want to report it?" "To who?" Amara had replied. "The principal who talks about Riverside's commitment to diversity in every assembly? The counselor who keeps asking me how I'm adjusting to the culture here, like I'm visiting from another planet?" Her mother didn't have an answer. Week 3 brought escalation in the way these things always do, gradually, then suddenly. a comment from Madison in the hallway. "Oh, I love your hair. Is it real or—" with a gesture that made other students laugh. Her assigned lab partner in chemistry asking to be reassigned because of personality differences, despite them never having had a conversation. Her locker getting accidentally bumped into repeatedly between classes, books spilling out while students stepped over them without helping. None of it was dramatic enough to report. That was the genius of it. Every incident lived in plausible deniability. Every comment could be explained away as a misunderstanding, a joke, an accident. But Amara knew. She'd lived this before, in different forms, with different faces. She recognized the architecture of exclusion, the way cruelty could be constructed from 1,000 small bricks that individually seemed like nothing. She continued training every morning, kicks, blocks, breathing exercises. Master Kim noticed her tension. "You're fighting something that isn't here," he observed during one session. "When you fight shadows, you only tire yourself." "What if the shadows follow you everywhere?" she had asked. He had smiled sadly. "Then you learn to carry light." On the morning of day 21, Amara walked into school wearing her orange backpack, the one her grandmother had given her, embroidered with her initials in gold thread. She had a chemistry test third period that she had studied extensively for. She had track practice after school. She planned to eat lunch in the cafeteria instead of the library because Master Kim's words about not hiding resonated with her. She had no idea that Madison Hartley had been watching her for 3 weeks, feeling something she couldn't name. Some combination of jealousy at Amara's academic performance, resentment at the attention their English teacher gave her essays, and perhaps something deeper, something inherited from dinner conversations and neighborhood demographics, and a worldview that saw Amara's presence at Riverside as intrusion rather than belonging. She had no idea that Madison had been building towards something, waiting for the right moment, the right audience. And lunch period, with its chaos and witnesses and camera phones, was the perfect stage.
The cafeteria at Riverside Prep was designed to feel less like a school lunchroom and more like a trendy food court. Different stations offered sushi, grain bowls, made-to-order sandwiches. Students clustered at round tables, their conversations creating a constant hum of privilege and social maneuvering. Amara went through the lunch line, selected a grain bowl with chicken and vegetables, paid with her scholarship meal card, which always felt like a small announcement of her different economic status, and looked for a place to sit. Most tables were full, tight clusters of established friend groups that had known each other since elementary school. She spotted an empty chair at a table near the windows. 4 other students sat there, including Jamal, one of the other black students at Riverside, a senior who had been friendly to her in passing. She approached and gestured to the empty seat. "Is taken?" "All yours," Jamal said with a welcoming smile. She sat down, opened her bag to retrieve her water bottle, and began eating. The conversation at the table continued, something about an upcoming physics test. Amara half listened, comfortable in the peripheral participation that had become her default mode. That's when she noticed Madison and 3 of her friends approaching. They didn't walk directly to the table. They paused at the lunch line, grabbed bottles of expensive-looking smoothies, then wandered in a path that seemed casual, but brought them closer. Madison's eyes were on Amara, that same assessing look from history class, but sharper now, more purposeful. The group stopped about 10 feet from Amara's table. Madison said something that made her friends laugh, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry. Like, actually though, imagine thinking you can just sit anywhere. Amara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. The conversation at her table died. Jamal's expression shifted, his eyes moving between Madison's group and Amara, recognizing the setup. Madison continued, still not looking directly at Amara, but clearly performing for the growing audience. Some people really don't understand how things work, like there's earned spots and then there's affirmative action spots. The words hung in the air. Several nearby tables went quiet. Phone cameras started emerging from pockets and bags, that Pavlovian response to potential drama. Amara set down her fork carefully. Every morning of training suddenly felt present in her body. The breathing exercises, the control techniques, the philosophy of response versus reaction. Master Kim's voice in her head. Count to 5 before you act, always. She counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she picked up her fork and resumed eating. The non-response seemed to infuriate Madison more than a confrontation would have. She stepped closer, her friends forming a small semicircle. The cafeteria's normal noise had reduced to a murmur. Everyone was watching now. "I'm talking to you. You know, the scholarship girl, the diversity hire." Amara finished chewing, swallowed, took a sip of water. She felt the weight of every eye in the room, felt Jamal tense beside her, preparing to intervene, felt the heat of humiliation trying to rise in her chest, the anger that wanted to burst out in words she'd regret. She set down her water bottle and looked up at Madison. Her voice when she spoke was calm, steady. "I'm eating lunch. Did you need something?" "Yeah, actually." Madison's voice got louder, playing to the crowd. "I need to understand how you got into this school, because some of us worked for it and some of us just checked a box on an application." There it was, the racial slur without the racial slur. The accusation that Amara's presence was unearned, illegitimate, an act of charity rather than merit. It was sophisticated in its cruelty. Nothing she said could be technically classified as a slur, but the intent was unmistakable. Phones were definitely recording now. Amara could see them in her peripheral vision, a dozen screens capturing what they expected to be entertainment. Amara set down her fork carefully. "I scored in the 98th percentile on the entrance exam. I have a 4.3 GPA. I qualified for this scholarship based on academic merit. Does that answer your question?" Did you, though? Or did they just need to hit a diversity quota? Be honest. One of Madison's friends laughed, a high, performative sound. Another student at a nearby table whispered, "Oh my God, this is insane," but made no move to intervene, just held their phone steadier. Amara stood up. She was 3 inches shorter than Madison, but something in the way she rose, controlled, centered, balanced, changed the energy. Her orange backpack was still on the chair behind her. She stepped away from the table, creating space. "I'm going to walk away now, because continuing this conversation isn't worth either of our time." She turned to gather her things. "That's right. Walk away. It's what your people are good at, right? When things get hard, just leaving?" Amara froze. The backpack strap was in her hand. Every instinct told her to keep moving, to remove herself from the situation, to be the bigger person, to not give Madison what she wanted. But something else rose up too. Something that had been building for 21 days of comments and looks and calculated exclusions. Something that had been building for years before that, in different schools and different contexts. Every time someone made her explain her presence, defend her accomplishments, justify her existence in spaces she'd earned the right to occupy. She turned back around. "Say that again," Amara said quietly. Madison's eyes lit up. This was the reaction she wanted, the confrontation that would look good on video. "I said your people are good at leaving when things get hard, running away. It's like cultural, right?" The cafeteria was completely silent now. Even the lunch staff had stopped moving behind their stations. Over 100 students watched, their phones raised, waiting to see what would happen when a black girl was publicly humiliated by a white girl in a privileged institution that preached diversity but didn't protect it. Jamal stood up. "Madison, that's enough." "I'm not talking to you," Madison snapped. Then back to Amara. "What are you going to do? Are you going to cry?
Are you going to run to administration and cry about racism? Play the victim like, "Finish that sentence," Amara interrupted, her voice cutting through Madison's. "Please, finish exactly what you were going to say." Madison faltered for just a second. In that second, she seemed to realize she'd pushed too far, said too much, crossed lines that even her privilege might not protect. But she was committed now, surrounded by friends who expected her to win, recorded by phones that would judge her retreat as weakness. "I just think," Madison said, her voice slightly shaky, "that you don't belong here, that you're only here because of affirmative action, and it's not fair to people who actually earned their spots, and someone needs to say it." She didn't get to finish because, at that moment, she shoved Amara. Not hard enough to really hurt, but enough to make her stumble backward, enough to cross from verbal harassment into physical assault. The cafeteria gasped collectively. Several voices said, "Oh shit," in unison. Phone zoomed in closer. Amara caught her balance instantly, her body responding with the muscle memory of thousands of hours of training. She didn't fall. She didn't stumble. She simply found her center, adjusted her stance, and looked at Madison with an expression that was absolutely calm. "You just put your hands on me," Amara said quietly. Madison, emboldened by the physical escalation in the audience, smiled. "Yeah, what are you going to do about it, scholarship girl?" And that's when Madison made her second mistake. She shoved again, harder this time, with enough force that she clearly expected Amara to fall backward, to be humiliated in front of everyone, to cement the social hierarchy Madison was trying to establish. Instead, something else happened. Something that would be replayed thousands of times on social media, analyzed frame by frame, turned into a moment that transcended one cafeteria in one preparatory school.
The shove came hard and fast. Madison's hands connected with Amara's shoulders with the full intention of sending her sprawling backward, creating the ultimate humiliation in front of 100 witnesses and dozens of recording phones. This was meant to be the final exclamation point on Madison's assertion of dominance. But Amara didn't fall. Instead, her body responded with the precision of someone who'd trained in Taekwondo since she was 7 years old. Her center of gravity dropped instinctively. Her feet found purchase. And in one fluid motion that seemed almost effortless, she redirected Madison's momentum using a technique Master Kim had drilled into her hundreds of times. Use their force against them. Control through technique, not anger. Madison stumbled forward, off balance, her own aggression working against her. Amara sidestepped cleanly like a matador with a charging bull, and Madison tumbled past her, barely catching herself on a nearby table. The cafeteria exploded in reaction, gasps, shouts. One person yelling, "Yo!" with the enthusiasm of someone watching a movie twist they didn't see coming. Madison spun around, her face red with humiliation and rage. "You!" She lunged forward, swinging wildly. No technique, no control, just fury and privilege and the absolute shock of not winning. Her fist aimed for Amara's face. What happened next took perhaps 3 seconds, but would be analyzed in slow-motion replays for weeks. Amara blocked the punch with a precise arm movement, redirecting it harmlessly to the side. Before Madison could reset, Amara executed a perfect foot sweep, not violent, not excessive, just a textbook seo nalgi that removed Madison's balance without causing injury. Madison went down hard, landing on her back on the cafeteria floor with a sound that made everyone in the room wince. Amara stood above her, completely controlled, not breathing hard, her expression still calm. She didn't follow up with strikes, didn't kick, didn't escalate. She simply stood there centered and ready while Madison lay sprawled on the floor. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Madison's friend Jessica rushed forward, helping her up. "Are you okay? Oh my God, she attacked you! Everyone saw that! She attacked—" "Stop!" The voice came from an unexpected source. Mr. Chen, the physics teacher, pushed through the crowd of students. Behind him came Ms. Rodriguez, the vice principal. They'd apparently heard the commotion from the hallway. Everyone put down their phones now. The phone stayed up. This was too good, too dramatic, too perfect for social media. Mr. Chen moved to Madison, checking if she was hurt. She was crying now, whether from pain or humiliation, it wasn't clear. "She attacked me," Madison sobbed. "I was just talking to her and she attacked me. Everyone saw." "That's not what happened," the voice came from Jamal, who'd stood up. "Madison pushed her first twice. Amara was defending herself." "She's lying," Madison's friend Sarah jumped in. "We saw the whole thing. The scholarship girl just went crazy and attacked Madison for no reason." The cafeteria erupted in competing narratives, students talking over each other, different versions of events, social allegiances determining whose story they backed. Ms. Rodriguez held up her hands for silence. "I said phones down and everyone quiet." The room reluctantly complied, although Amara could see some students still recording from under tables, from behind backpacks. Ms. Rodriguez looked at Amara. "What happened?" Amara took a breath. Every eye in the room was on her. She could feel the weight of it, not just this moment, but everything it represented. Every time a black person was asked to justify defending themselves. Every time self-defense was reframed as aggression. Every time the victim became the accused simply by refusing to be victimized. Amara said, "Madison approached me while I was eating. She made several racist comments about me being a diversity hire and questioning whether I belonged at this school. I attempted to disengage. She physically pushed me twice. When she swung at my face, I defended myself using non-lethal techniques from my martial arts training. I did not initiate any physical contact." "That's a lie." Madison was shaking now, her face contorted. "She's lying. I barely touched her and she—" "There are approximately 30 phones that recorded the entire incident," Amara interrupted calmly. "The evidence exists." Ms. Rodriguez's face changed. She looked around the cafeteria at the sea of guilty faces, students holding phones they were definitely not supposed to have recording. "Anyone who has video of this incident needs to come to my office immediately after lunch. And I mean everyone. This is not optional." Madison was still crying, still insisting she was the victim, still being comforted by friends who were building the narrative that Amara had overreacted, had been aggressive, had proven she didn't belong. But something had shifted in the room. Amara could feel it. Students who'd been silent, who'd watched the harassment build for weeks, who'd seen the shove that started the physical altercation, they were looking at her differently now. Not with pity or sympathy, but with something else. Respect, maybe, or recognition. The recognition that she had been tested in a way she'd never been tested before, not physically, but morally. She'd been given a choice between accepting abuse or defending herself, between being the good victim who took humiliation quietly or being the bad victim who fought back. She'd chosen to fight back, with control, with technique, with the dignity her training had taught her. Now, she would find out what price that choice would cost.
The meeting in Ms. Rodriguez's office lasted 90 minutes. Amara sat across from the vice principal and her mother, who'd been called out of work and arrived 45 minutes after the incident. By then, the videos had already spread, not just at Riverside Prep, but across social media platforms. #Riverside Racism was trending locally. Students had posted the footage, and it showed exactly what Amara had described. Madison's harassment, the racist comments, the 2 pushes, the wild swing at Amara's face, and Amara's controlled defense. Ms. Rodriguez had watched the videos from 6 different angles. So had Principal Dawson, who joined the meeting halfway through. Amara's mother had watched them on her phone in the parking lot before entering the building, her hands shaking with an emotion Amara couldn't quite identify. Anger, pride, fear, all of it mixed together. "Amara," Principal Dawson began, his voice carefully measured, "you're not in trouble. Let me be clear about that first. What I saw on those videos is a student who was harassed,
physically assaulted, and who defended herself with remarkable restraint. Amara felt tension she didn't know she was holding begin to release. However, he continued, and Amara's mother's hand tightened on her shoulder, we have to address the fact that a physical altercation occurred on school grounds. Our policy requires that both students involved be suspended pending a full investigation. No. Amara's mother spoke for the first time since sitting down. Her voice was quiet but absolutely firm. No, that is not happening. You are not suspending my daughter for being assaulted. That is not how this ends. Mrs. Thompson, I understand your frustration. Do you? Her mother leaned forward. Do you understand what it's like to send your black daughter to a predominantly white institution and pray every single day that she'll be safe? Do you understand that I watched my child get called racist slurs on camera while 100 students stood by and recorded it? Do you understand that she was physically attacked and defended herself with more restraint than most adults could manage, and you're telling me she deserves punishment for it? Principal Dawson was silent. Because I understand something, Amara's mother continued. I understand that those videos are public now. I understand that the community is watching how you handle this. And I understand that if you suspend my daughter for being the victim of a racist assault, it won't just be me you answer to. It'll be lawyers. It'll be the media. It'll be every parent who sends their child here believing you actually mean it when you talk about your commitment to diversity and safety. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Principal Dawson nodded slowly. You're right. Amara, you will not be suspended. Madison Hartley, however, will be suspended for 2 weeks and will be required to complete a comprehensive program on racial sensitivity and appropriate conduct before returning. Additionally, we'll be implementing immediate changes to our anti-harassment policies and our response protocols. Amara wanted to feel relief. Instead, she felt exhausted, because she knew this wasn't over. Madison would come back. Her friends would create their own narrative. The school would issue a statement about their zero-tolerance policy and their commitment to inclusion. And in a few weeks, everyone would move on. But something had changed, even if just a little. When Amara returned to school 2 days later, she'd taken a day to recover, not physically, but emotionally. Students approached her in ways they hadn't before. Some to apologize for not intervening, some to share their own experiences with Madison's bullying, some to simply acknowledge what they'd witnessed. Jamal found her between classes. You know that video got like 500,000 views, right? People are calling you a hero. I'm not a hero. I just didn't let someone push me around. Sometimes that's the same thing. The martial arts studio felt different when she walked in for her next training session. Master Kim was waiting, and she knew he'd seen the videos. Everyone had. I used what you taught me. Control, restraint, minimum necessary force. He nodded. You carried yourself with honor. But tell me, how do you feel? Amara thought about it. Tired, she admitted, and angry that I had to defend myself at all. Angry that doing the right thing still feels like losing because I'm the one who will be remembered for fighting instead of being left alone in the first place. That anger is valid, Master Kim said. The world is not just, but you responded to injustice with discipline. You could have hurt that girl badly. You chose not to. That choice defines character. In the weeks that followed, Amara's experience sparked genuine conversation at Riverside Prep, the kind that's uncomfortable and necessary. Several students came forward with their own experiences of racial harassment that had gone unreported. The school hired a diversity coordinator, an actual role with power, not just a symbolic gesture. Teacher training programs were implemented. Students formed a coalition for equity and inclusion. Madison returned after her suspension, quieter, avoiding Amara completely. Her friend group fragmented. Some students who'd stood by and filmed that day approached Amara with genuine apologies. Others pretended it never happened. Amara continued training every morning, continued acing her classes, made the regional track team, eventually made actual friends, people who saw her for who she was, not what she represented.
But she never forgot that moment in the cafeteria. The feeling of standing alone while everyone watched, recorded, waited to see if she would break or fight back. The choice she made to defend herself, despite knowing it might cost her. The realization that sometimes dignity requires action, not patience.